Well, we didn't lose people tonight since I announced Sunday that I'd be here, so that's a good thing. Okay. With Bruce's absence, tonight we'll talk about something that's it's kind of dear to my heart. This subject, and you're going to probably think I'm crazy when I tell you what it is. Mainly because I've had an experience with this, and so it's something that I don't know. I could get on a soapbox about it from time to time, but tonight we're going to talk about hypocrisy. And as I said Sunday, you know I like defining words, so I'm going to define hypocrisy. And in tonight's context, it's meaning to have a pretense of having a virtuous character, moral or religious beliefs or principles that one does not really possess. What's another way to say someone's being a hypocrite? Two-faced. Anything else? Person acts one way in front of one group, acts another way in front of another group. Whoever they're trying to impress or whoever they're trying to get one over on, basically, is what a hypocrite is. Some form of the word hypocrite appears around 29 times in the New Testament. The majority of those times it's where Christ is describing the actions of the Pharisees or the scribes. It's something in my opinion, and I doubt I should have done this Sunday so I could have followed up with the rest of it tonight, but it's something that I think is a big problem in the church. Can be. And I'm not saying in this local congregation, but it happens. I mean, we've all seen it. At some point, we may have been that person that was being the hypocrite by sitting in the pew and partaking of the Lord's Supper, bowing our heads during prayer, and then the minute we walk out the door and we're around our colleagues or our friends, you'd never know the difference. You'd never know that we would step foot in a church building. Let's start off in Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. Here Christ says, "Take heed that you do not do your charitable deeds before men to be seen by them. Otherwise you have no reward from your Father in heaven. Therefore when you do a charitable deed, do not sound a trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory from men. Assuredly I say to you, they have their reward." Now, there's nothing wrong with being charitable. In all honesty, there's probably times we need to be more charitable. I think about the people that stand on the corners in Little Rock or out here by the interstate. I struggle with that. Because I wonder how truthful they're being. There would be nothing wrong with helping them out, giving them food. But off of these two verses, what would be the problem with that is if you paraded up to them with your bag of whatever, McDonald's, Wendy's, whatever you wanted, and was just like holding it up so everybody could see as you're just making a showing of it. That's what's talked about here. You're not really doing it to be charitable. You're doing it because you want praise of men. I think about, say, at work. They're asking for weekly donations or every pay period, how you get paid, to make a donation to a particular children's hospital. Let's use them. Does it mean that you have to hide what you do for people? Because at some point, if you're doing a payroll deduction for your charitable gift to Children's Hospital or the Women's Center here at Conway Regional, somebody's got to know that. But it's in your attitude of how you approach them. I'm giving so much per pay period, making a big deal about it. Daryl?
Yeah, also in Matthew chapter 5, verse 16, it says, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." And so, if we should be doing good works, and if we're doing good works out among the world, we're going to be shining the light of Jesus Christ, but we don't do it for the wrong reason.
Right. Yeah, we can't be examples of God living in us, basically, if we always hide the things that we do. So, Ananias and Sapphira is something that comes to mind when I think about this. They were being hypocritical by saying that, I've given all that I have, when really they didn't. And their works were shown immediately, at separate times, but immediately for each one. So, same chapter, Matthew chapter 6 and verse 5. It says, "And when you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the corners of the streets, that they may be seen by men. Assuredly, I say to you, they have their reward." So again, this situation, all they're doing is they're praying to be seen, for people to walk by and be like, "That's a righteous person. There he is praying." Can that be done? We pray 3 times on Sunday. Opening before class, opening before worship, closing prayer. Can that be done in a manner that's hypocritical? Well, I think so. Flip over to Luke chapter 18, and this is one of the ways I see that it can be done. Luke chapter 18, verse 9 says, "And also he spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others." Verse 10, "Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, 'God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess.'" Verse 13 says, "And the tax collector, standing afar off, would not so as much raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, 'God, be merciful to me, a sinner.'" Commentary H. Leo Bowles on Luke, on this section, states that the word "stood" there in verse 11 does not necessarily, as in the original says, it meant to strike a pose. It said to have the posture that extruded an attitude, so that even if he was praying quietly to himself, that it was still his attitude, his portrayal, how he was standing. Everybody knew how he was acting, what he was portraying. That he was just doing it just to be seen. And then you have this tax collector over there who was very humble in how he was praying. So when we lead a prayer, it's something we have to be careful of, regardless of when it is, what it's for. We have to be careful that we have the right attitude before the congregation, because we don't want to give off that attitude of, look at me, I can pray. Because there's some that are not comfortable with praying.
When Jesus, you mentioned earlier, when he addressed, he called the Pharisees hypocrites.
Mm-hmm.
And Matthew 23, he one of those woe unto you hypocrites. One of his statements is, you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. And then it goes on to say, therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation.
Yep.
There's another example of making long prayer. They posture.
Yep.
That's a good word. They posture.
Yep.
Just like the Pharisee in that parable.
Right. Anything else? Okay, Matthew chapter 15. There, let's begin in verse 1. It says, then the scribes and Pharisees who were from Jerusalem came to Jesus, saying, why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread. And he answered and said to them, why do you also transgress the commandments of God because of your tradition? For God commanded, saying, honor your father and your mother, and he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say, whoever says to his father or mother, whatever profit you might have received from me as a gift to God, then he need not honor his father or mother. Thus you have made the commandment of God by no effect by your tradition. Hypocrites! Well did Isaiah prophesy about you, saying, these people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. So here these scribes and Pharisees are saying, your disciples are not following tradition of our elders. But Christ turns that to... I thought about this as I was studying it. It wasn't... You know how as... I won't say all kids. But as kids, and even adults do this. Somebody says, well, you did this. Well, you did this. Not like I'm pointing at Alan, like he did it. But we have that attitude, that mentality of, oh, well, you said I did this. Well, I'm going to make what you did even worse. Christ isn't doing this here. He's come back with I won't say an argument, but he came back with a point of, you're trying to hold the disciples to this tradition of elders, of men, yet because of your tradition, you're transgressing God's word. You're being hypocritical about what you stand for. Let's turn to Matthew chapter 23. Thought Todd was going to take all my verses. He just took one. Beginning in verse 13. It says, but woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men, for you neither go in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrite. No, that's the one you Todd just mentioned. You devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. Verse 15, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you travel land and sea to win one proselyte, and when he is won, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Verse 23 again says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithes of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. 25 and 27, again, same thing. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. So he not pulling any punches with them. Telling them exactly how they're acting, who they are. Luke chapter 10. And this is, whether it's a true or just a story that to illustrate a point. It's something that I would say more than likely happened. This exact instance. Beginning in verse 25. It says, "And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, What is written in the law? What is your reading of it? So he answered and said, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered rightly. Do this, and you will live. Verse 29, but this lawyer, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, Who is my neighbor? Verse 30, Jesus answered and said, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a certain priest came down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him." Who was in this parable? Who was under obligation to help this man? Yes. Was the Samaritan really obligated?
I think he was. Just as much as anybody else's. However, because of the other two, the Levite and priest, they put themselves out as being teachers of the law, and as such, made people think that they were righteous.
Right.
And we all have a duty.
Yes.
That's what my point was.
Yes. Yeah. No, and I agree.
But they had a greater responsibility in one respect, because they were saying, we are righteous.
Right.
We're, and what they were telling people, reading the laws and things, but then failing to do what the will of God is, instead of, that's when they were hypocrites. They were holding themselves out as if they were.
Right. Yeah, Jordan.
We see the priest and the Levite, this stuck out like a sore thumb.
Right.
And we get the point, and it's maximized because they were a Levite, and they were a priest. And that's the danger whenever we're hypocrites. We'll stick out like a sore thumb.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, if it had just said a certain man walked by and saw this guy laying here half dead, and he walked by, a second guy came by, and then a Samaritan, it wouldn't have the same meaning, I don't think, as what it does here, saying a priest and then a Levite looked and be like, yeah, I don't want no part of that. For whatever reason. Whether it was they feared for themselves, if they went over and helped thinking, well, I'll end up just like him, or if they just didn't want to get their hands dirty. But either way, yeah, they were hypocritical by saying, this is the law, this is what you should do, and then they turn and completely turn a blind eye to it. Mike?
What makes it even more disgusting is the fact that there probably was no one around, so no one would have been witness to this.
Right.
Other than God.
Right.
And the Samaritan, yes, he was obligated, but at the same time, he could have walked past. No one would have ever known.
No.
But he didn't, and that's the point of the story, is that the priest, the Levite, both of them who should have had tremendous amount of compassion, showed none.
Right. Then you've got the Samaritan who, I mean, what was a Samaritan to a Jew? Nothing. I mean, they detested them. Yet this Samaritan had compassion on a man that, had they met in any other circumstance, that Jew, and we have to assume that he was a Jew, given the story, might not have done the same back to him. That's also one of the things about, seeing these people begging for money or for food or whatever. this story usually kind of comes into my head. We talk about taking care of those that are in need, and yet how many times do we drive by? And I'm not advocating stop and give everyone money or food, because the few, and I'll be the first to admit I don't give probably to the ones to everyone, but the ones that I have, I've realized why I don't, because of comments they make after I'm done helping them. Very rarely is it a truthful thank you. It's usually like, okay, now where am I going to get my next? All right, you giving me this, now who am I going to get this from? And it's never in a manner of, thank you very much. I appreciate your help. I still need more, and I'm going to, it's always just, it's a cocky attitude, arrogance. So, yes, sir.
I want to say the Samaritan did more than the other two, because he took the man into a place and he told him to take care of him. And then also he told him, he said, I'll be back tomorrow, and if it costs more, I'll pay you what it costs. So he took his time, his money, and then he come back.
Exactly.
And if he owed him more money, he would have paid.
He would have paid him. That's right.
So the Samaritan was the one that did everything for this man.
That's right. Yep.
And I think there's if we have a chance to do it, I think we should try to help people that we can.
Right. Our good deeds our example can bring people to Christ. I mean, if they're truly in need, our example can help them.
In this story, Good Samaritan,
Uh-huh.
he never gave that man one cent. He didn't give him money.
No.
He took care of him.
Yes. Yeah. He didn't come up to him and say, "Man, here's 2 pence.
He cared for him.
Good luck with I mean, and that kind of I've never really thought about it that way. But you're right. He didn't take it. He didn't say, "Here you go. Good luck. God bless. Hope you make it." So, Jordan.
Just because this is something that I struggle with, throw it out there. I use the idea that it wouldn't be wise for me to give some people money as an excuse for doing nothing for years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think we are called to be wise with what God has given us, and so we can make choices that are wise, it's not up to us to determine that someone else is going to do the right thing with what they have. But we have to do the right thing with what we have.
Right. No, I agree. That's a struggle that most people have. Is if I give them money, they're just going to go buy booze or cigarettes or something that I don't agree with, so I'm just not going to do anything. You can always offer them, if they got the sign saying, "I'm hungry, need gas," say, "There's a gas station right there. I'll put gas in your tank. There's a restaurant right there. Meet me over there and I'll buy you whatever you want. Whatever meal you want, I'll buy it for you." So we have to, if we do it, we just have to make sure we have the right attitude by doing that. Romans chapter 2. Romans chapter 2, verses 1 through, we'll go down to verse 3. It says, "Therefore you are inexcusable, O man, whoever you are who judge. For in whatever you judge another, you condemn yourself. For you who judge practice the same things. But we know that the judgment of God is according to truth against those who practice such things. And do you think this, O man, you who judge those practicing such things and doing the same, that you will escape the judgment of God?" So here Paul's warning of hypocritical judgment. It parallels what Christ taught in Matthew chapter 7. There's nothing wrong with trying to teach an erring soul. But we better make sure that we're saying up and up. We better make sure that we're on the right path and not doing the exact same things that we're trying to tell them not to do. You know, you tell people you don't need to be cheating and you don't need to be lying and doing that when you turn around on the other side and you're doing the exact same things you're telling them is wrong. That's one of the things that, and I'm going to skip some things. I'm going to look at one more. And this is important. In Galatians chapter 2, and we talked about this last week, I believe it was, where Paul rebukes Peter. In Galatians chapter 2 and verse 11, it says, "Now when Peter had come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face because he was to be blamed. For before certain men came from James, he would eat with the Gentiles. When they came, meaning the Jews, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing those who were the circumcision." So here Peter was being hypocritical about, okay, I'm accepting you Gentiles until they get here. And as soon as the Jews get here, I'll talk to you later when they leave. This was important for many reasons. It helped establish to everyone, should have, that Paul was an apostle and that Peter was erring in what he was doing. But that proves to us that we should want to be with fellow Christians. And if we're more worried about what somebody thinks when they walk in the door, seeing us sit with somebody that is a Christian, then maybe we've got some bigger issues to worry about.
What made it even more troubling was the fact that it was Peter who opened the door for the Gentiles to be Christians.
Right.
But I think it's pretty obvious that Peter was impulsive, and he was one of these fire any aim kind of guys anyway.
Right. Shoot first, ask questions
But it
later.
didn't justify what happened.
Right.
That was just who he was.
Right.
But it's good that Paul made him aware that what he did also was instrumental in others separating themselves.
It was it was harmful
Yeah.
in the spread of the gospel. If you've got who most Christians looked at as, you know, I won't say the head Christian. That's not right. That's not what I mean. I can't think of what I'm meaning. But a very strong, devout Christian, follower of Christ, turning his back on the people that they're trying to spread the gospel to, and that's tough. That would be tough for others to be like, you know, okay, we got to convert these Gentiles, and people are like, well, hang on, Peter, not really accepting them. How?
And we don't know how long this was after Peter had opened the door
Right.
to the Gentiles, but it had to have been quite a bit of time.
Yeah. Right. You know, back then there wasn't social media and, you know, the internet. Word didn't travel as instant as what it does today. I can video something on my phone today and in 2 minutes have it to Todd or Alan or Mike saying, man, look what I just saw. And be this, I mean, if something like this happened today, I mean, everybody would know about it instantly. It would be trending on social media. It'd make the news. I mean, you know, devout Christian Peter withdraws himself from Gentiles. Paul rebukes to his face. I mean, you can just see how that would be if that was something that had video coverage. Yet, we tend to think that as Christians today that we can get away with that. Rick?
Let's be clear, to do that, that's just as simple as what Peter done.
Yes.
You're spreading things instead of addressing the way God
Yes.
That's simple.
Yeah.
We all sin, we all fall short of the glory of God.
Right.
I think you have to be real careful because I've heard too many times people say, I'm not going to go to church because they're pretenders, you know. Well, guess what? Everybody here makes mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the reason we pray and we serve God for that forgiveness and His glory.
Right.
That's not an excuse to not serve God because people aren't perfect.
Well, that's a crutch that people use. Is, well, I'm just as good as they are, and y'all accept them and all the stuff that they. And believe me, it is a difficult thing to battle. When you know for a fact, and I mean, this is from personal experience, of people that you know are not living right, yet, and it wasn't here, but they're sitting in a pew and you're fellowshipping with them just as if nothing was wrong. And that's a hard thing to try to talk to somebody about, saying, do you realize you need to be right with the Lord? And yet, I'm not pointing to anybody now, I'm pointing to there. That person right there, I know, is out doing sinful things. It's not I think, it's I know.
Well, let me clarify. I'm not saying that you sit and worship with people that are doing that without addressing it.
Right.
Or if the elders aren't willing to address that. I'm not saying
Well, and that's
in that congregation.
yes.
That's not an excuse not to serve God.
I agree.
And that's the part that to me, everybody wants to play the word. But whenever they do it, they're being hypocritical.
Exactly. No, I know exactly what you were meaning, Rick, and I wasn't saying it's just like I said. That's where, in my mind, sin is in itself is detrimental to the Lord's church. Hypocrisy within the Lord's church. How hard is it for me to study with somebody when they know a member of the local congregation is worse than that person? Not that person being unfaithful to God is not a sinner. Sin separates us from God, whether it's a lie or murder. There is no in between. I'm going to say, but I mean, it's tough. I can't imagine it not being tough on the elders to deal with that type of hypocrisy. Yes, sir.
Well, it's only Wednesday, and I've used that as a talking point twice this week to folks that are not part of the body. It's like they want to be spiritual. You hear that need, you hear that want. And I said, look, if you're going to, they talk about hypocrisy and organized religion. And I'm like, we're talking about the Church of Jesus Christ. And if it doesn't walk like the duck, it doesn't talk like the duck, it doesn't smell like the duck.
Right.
You haven't searched. Unfortunately, there's 5,000 churches in the city of Holland, right? And 4,900 things. But I told them, I go there for the singleness of purpose. To uplift those who want to go home.
Right.
This is not my house. And I tell them, you know it's not your home either. And you know who is the master of our lives.
Right.
Why are you sitting on the bench?
Well, and it's the responsibility of everyone, not just the elders, to help combat hypocrisy. Now, the elders are the ones that end up having to sit back in a room to themselves with these people if it's that bad, to discuss with them.
Let me go just a tad further.
Okay.
And say, my whole point was, in this congregation, we don't judge.
Right. But it's just, it's easy for people to use that as a crutch, to say, why should I, when, I mean, they're a hypocrite, they're doing things that are against, why should, I mean, I'm not doing those things, but you won't accept me. Yes, Rick?
I just think every one of us has to practice and think every day that as a Christian, we cannot fit in every crowd, and we cannot align with every person we come in contact with.
Yeah, and we should,
We just can't.
yeah,
And we have to accept the fact that people that we would like to have as friends sometimes just can't be our friends just because of what their habits or what they want to do.
right,
And that in itself can create opportunities for discussion. And we need to have the backbone as Christians to stand that stand and do that.
right,
And pull back, and you can be nice to people all day long. That don't mean you embrace what they're doing or partake in what they're doing.
right. And by hanging out, and that's something that young people, I think, have trouble sometimes realizing. They think, well, I'm just hanging out. I'm not participating. But how many times have we, right or wrong, seen somebody hanging out with a group of people that we know are not the greatest group to be hanging with, and be like, man, you know, they're hanging with those people. They're hanging out. That can't be good. I'm guilty. I did it when I was growing up, and that's what got me, I mean, into the trouble that I got into with by hanging out. You know, that bad apple one bad apple spoils the whole bunch. I've seen it. Thank y'all very much for your comments.